I'm Kristen, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. Tom and I had been married for 2 years, living in a beautiful apartment in a nice neighborhood. We both had good jobs. I worked at an advertising agency, and Tom headed sales at a sports nutrition company. Our plan was simple: save for a house, then start a family. We lived frugally, sharing one car. Every morning, Tom dropped me off at work before heading to his office. I'd make my own way home in the evenings. It wasn't always convenient, but we were determined. Then Tom's sister, Sarah, came to visit with her 2 kids. She was a single mom. Her husband had died in a car accident. Tom's parents, my in-laws, were super protective of her. They were always trying to make sure she didn't feel lonely, which is why they sent her to stay with us. When Sarah arrived, Tom was over the moon. "Isn't it great to have them here?" he said, helping with her bags. I nodded, trying to match his excitement. "Sure, it'll be nice to spend time together." At first, I thought Tom's attention to Sarah and her kids was sweet. He played with the children, listened to Sarah's problems, and bent over backward to make them comfortable. As the days passed, Tom's focus on Sarah intensified. He started demanding that I put her needs first, too. "Kristen, can you help Sarah with the kids' laundry?" Or, "Why don't you take Sarah shopping? She needs to relax." I was exhausted from work and now had to cater to Sarah's every whim. The breaking point came when Tom said, "Kristen, Sarah's going through a tough time. We need to make her stay as comfortable as possible. Can't you be more understanding?" I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. "Tom, I'm trying, but I'm tired too. I work all day, then come home to cook and clean for everyone. I need a break too." He frowned, clearly unhappy with my response. "Sarah's a single mom. She needs our support. You should be more sympathetic." As I watched Tom fuss over Sarah and her kids, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. This wasn't just a visit anymore. Something had shifted, and I wasn't sure I was going to like where it was heading. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah showed no signs of leaving. I was exhausted, both mentally and physically. After long days at the ad agency, I'd come home to cook for everyone and clean up the mess. Tom's constant criticism was wearing me down. "Kristen, Sarah doesn't like spicy food. Can't you make something else?" Tom complained one evening. I bit my tongue, fighting back tears of frustration. "Tom, I'm doing my best. I'm tired too, you know. Sarah's with the kids all day. She's exhausted and has no time to cook," he shot back. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "I understand that, but—" "No buts, Kristen. We need to support her." I nodded silently, not wanting to start another argument. I got it. I really did. Sarah was going through a tough time, both mentally and physically. But I was tired of Tom's unfair reproaches. I couldn't wait for things to go back to normal. One evening, as I was scrubbing dishes after dinner, Tom dropped a bombshell. "Kristen, we need to talk," he said, leaning against the counter. I dried my hands, bracing myself. "What's up?" "Sarah's thinking of looking for a job here in the city," he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. I froze. "Oh? That's unexpected." "Yeah, isn't it great? But here's the thing," he continued, not noticing my discomfort. "I think you should quit your job and take care of the kids in the house." The dish I was holding slipped from my hands, clattering in the sink. "What? You can't be serious." Tom frowned. "Of course I am. Sarah needs to work, and someone needs to watch the kids." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Tom, I'm not quitting my job to take care of someone else's children. That's not fair." "Fair? What's not fair is expecting Sarah to manage everything on her own," he snapped. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Okay, let's think about this. Where is Sarah planning to live if she gets a job here?" Before Tom could answer, Sarah walked into the kitchen, a smile on her face. "Oh, didn't Tom tell you? I'll be living here, of course, with my amazing brother. He understands me, supports me. I couldn't ask for a better brother." I stared at Tom, my eyes demanding an explanation. He shifted uncomfortably under my gaze. "Look, Kristen, can we discuss this later?" he said quickly, avoiding eye contact. "No, Tom, we need to talk about this now," I insisted, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm not okay with this arrangement. We can't all live together. It's too cramped in this apartment for 5 people." Tom's face lit up, as if he'd just remembered something wonderful. "But honey, don't you see? This is perfect. We were planning to buy a house anyway. Now we have even more reason to do it sooner. There'll be plenty of space for everyone." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Tom, that's not the point. We can't just—" But he cut me off mid-sentence, his attention already elsewhere. "Sorry, Kristen. We'll talk later. I promised the kids I'd play with them." And just like that, he was gone, leaving me standing in the kitchen, mouth agape, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. From that day on, everything changed. Tom stopped driving me to work, always with the same excuse. "Sorry, babe. I'm really busy this morning." I knew he was lying, but I couldn't prove it. So, I found myself commuting on my own, both morning and evening, adding extra stress to my already hectic days. One afternoon, I came home early from work, hoping to get a head start on dinner. Instead, I walked into chaos. Sarah was sprawled on the couch, eyes glued to some trashy reality show, while her kids ran wild. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "what's going on here?" She barely glanced up. "Oh, hi, Kristen. The kids were bored, so I let them play." I looked around in horror. The walls were covered in crayon scribbles. There were mysterious stains on the couch, and my beloved houseplants, the ones I'd nurtured for years, were knocked over, soil spilling across the floor. "This isn't playing, Sarah. This is destroying our home." I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice. Sarah just shrugged, her eyes already back on the TV. "They're just kids, Kristen. Lighten up." I took a deep breath, counting to 10 in my head. "Sarah, I thought you were looking for a job. Have you had any luck?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, I've sent my resume everywhere, but nothing good has come up yet. They all want too much work for too little pay. I'm not desperate, you know." I bit my tongue, holding back the retort that threatened to spill out. Of course she wasn't desperate. She had a free ride here, with Tom and me footing the bill and doing all the work. That night, as Tom and I got ready for bed, I tried one more time to talk sense into him. "Tom, we need to set some ground rules. Sarah can't just let the kids run wild like that, and she needs to start contributing to the household chores." Tom sighed, looking exasperated. "Kristen, Sarah's going through a tough time. Can't you cut her some slack?" "Slack? Tom, I've been cutting her slack for weeks. Our home is being destroyed. I'm doing all the work, and you're acting like I'm the unreasonable one here." "Keep your voice down," Tom hissed. "You'll wake everyone up. Look, I know it's not ideal, but it's family. We have to stick together." As I lay in bed that night, listening to Tom's soft snores, I couldn't help but wonder, when did I stop being part of this family? And more importantly, how much longer could I keep living like this? As days turned into weeks, the situation at home only worsened. Tom seemed oblivious to the chaos his sister and her kids were creating. Whenever I tried to establish some order or ask the kids to clean up after themselves, Sarah would run to Tom with complaints. "Tom," I overheard her one evening, her voice dripping with fake concern, "I don't think Kristen likes the children. She's always yelling at them, forcing them to clean. They're just kids, you know?" I waited for Tom to defend me, to point out that basic tidiness wasn't child abuse. Instead, I heard him sigh heavily. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'll talk to her." That night, Tom confronted me in our bedroom. "Look at this place, Kristen. It's a mess. If you can't keep it clean with the kids here, maybe—" "Maybe what, Tom?" I challenged, already knowing where this was going. "Maybe you should consider quitting your job. If you were home full-time, you could keep the house in order without putting so much pressure on the kids." I laughed bitterly. "So now it's child labor to ask kids to clean up after themselves?" Tom, do you hear yourself? But he wasn't listening. He'd been pushing this agenda for weeks now, and I was exhausted from fighting it. You know what, Tom? Fine. You want me to quit? I quit. His eyes widened in surprise. Really? You mean it? I nodded, a plan already forming in my mind. Yep, I'll call work tomorrow and tell them. Tom's face broke into a wide grin. He hugged me tightly, not noticing how stiff I was in his embrace. Oh, Kristen, this is great. You'll see, everything will be better now. The next day, I did call work, but not to quit. I spoke with my boss and explained that I needed to take a 3-month unpaid leave for family reasons. Thankfully, I'd recently trained an intern who could cover for me. My boss was understanding and approved my request. When I told Tom I'd quit, he beamed with pride, shooting a triumphant look at Sarah. See? I told you Kristen would come around. She understands the importance of family. As I watched them share their moment of victory, I felt like a stranger in my own home. But I reminded myself that this was temporary. 3 months. I'd given myself 3 months to see how this situation would play out, to see if Tom would realize the mistake he was making. The next morning, as Tom left for work, he kissed me on the cheek. Have a great day at home, honey. I know you'll do a fantastic job. I forced a smile, waving as he drove away. Then I turned to face the mess that awaited me inside. Sarah was already on the couch, TV remote in hand, while her kids ran around, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. From the day I quit my job, my life transformed into an endless cycle of chores and childcare. I'd wake up at dawn, prepare breakfast for everyone, pack Tom's lunch, and then spend the rest of the day cleaning, cooking, and looking after Sarah's kids. Meanwhile, Sarah lived like she was on a perpetual vacation. Days blurred together in a haze of domestic duties. Sarah would swan out of the house, off to shop or meet friends for coffee, leaving her children in my care without so much as a backward glance. I'd watch her drive away in Tom's car, while I was left stranded at home, juggling housework and childcare. Tom, for his part, seemed oblivious to the imbalance. He'd come home, kiss me on the cheek, and ask, "How was your day, honey?" As if I'd chosen this life, as if I was living my dream instead of his sister's. One evening, as I was serving dinner, a meal I'd spent hours preparing while Sarah napped, Tom made an announcement. "So, Sarah's birthday is coming up next month," he said, grinning. "I've got something special planned." Sarah clapped her hands excitedly. "Ooh, do tell!" Tom shook his head. "It's a surprise, but clear your schedule for the evening of the 15th. On the evening of Sarah's birthday, we all piled into Tom's car and headed to LeBlanc, the most expensive restaurant in town. It was the kind of place Tom and I used to dream about going for our anniversaries, but always decided the money would be better spent on our house fund. Tom's parents were already there when we arrived, cooing over Sarah and barely acknowledging my existence. As we settled into our seats, I couldn't help but feel like an outsider looking in on this family celebration. Throughout the meal, the conversation revolved around Sarah, her struggles, her strength, her dreams. I sat quietly, pushing food around my plate, feeling increasingly invisible. After the main course, Tom stood up, gently tapping his glass for attention. "I'd like to make a toast to my incredible sister, Sarah. You've been through so much, and you handle it all with such grace. I'm in awe of your strength." Sarah beamed, soaking in the praise. Tom continued, "And to celebrate your birthday, I have a special surprise." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. For a split second, my heart leaped. Was this all an elaborate ruse? Was he actually going to surprise me with a gift to thank me for my sacrifices? But then he turned to Sarah and held out the box. "Sarah, you've mentioned how hard it is getting around with the kids. So..." He opened the box, revealing a set of car keys. "Happy birthday, sis! Your very own car, just like you've always wanted." The table erupted in applause and exclamations of delight. Sarah jumped up, hugging Tom tightly. "Oh my God, Tom! I can't believe it. You're the best brother ever." I sat there, frozen in shock. A car. He had bought her a car. My mind flashed back to all the times I had mentioned needing a second car, all the times Tom had said we couldn't afford it, that we needed to save for our house. "Tom," I said, trying to keep my tone even, "can I ask why you bought such an expensive gift for Sarah?" The table fell silent, all eyes turning to us. Tom's smile faltered slightly. "Well, Sarah needs a car. She has 2 kids, and it's hard for her to get them to the park or the doctor. Plus, she'll need it when she starts working soon." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "And what about me? I've been asking for a second car for months." Tom's expression hardened. "You're at home all day, Kristen. You don't need a car." The injustice of it all hit me like a physical blow. "How much did this car cost, Tom?" He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. $20,000. The room started to spin. $20,000? Where did you get that kind of money? Tom cleared his throat. "I took it from our joint account, but don't worry, I'll put it back as soon as I get my bonus at work." Something inside me snapped. "You took our savings without even discussing it with me? That was our house fund, Tom. I want you to return that money right now." "Kristen," Tom's mother gasped, "how can you be so selfish? Your sister-in-law needs this car." But I was beyond caring about their opinions. Years of frustration poured out of me. Selfish? I've given up everything for this family. My job, my dreams, my identity. Tom's face was red with anger. "If you're going to be so greedy and inflexible, fine. I'll take out a loan and put the money back in our account. Happy now?" "No," I shouted, beyond caring about the scene we were causing. "I don't want you taking out a loan. I want you to sell the car and put our savings back where they belong." Sarah, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "See, Tom? I told you she was controlling. She's trying to make you henpecked." Tom's parents nodded in agreement. "Kristen," his father said sternly, "you need to learn your place. Tom is the head of the household." I felt like I was drowning, surrounded by people who didn't see me as a person, just an accessory to their perfect family narrative. Tom stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "That's enough, Kristen. You've ruined everyone's evening with your behavior. Don't you know how to act in public?" Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I stood up, grabbing my purse. "I'm leaving." "Good!" Tom shouted, no longer caring about the other restaurant patrons staring at us. "Get out!" "You ungrateful freeloader. I'm the one who earns the money in this family, and you should be obeying me. Maybe if you got a job, you'd have a right to an opinion." His words hit me like physical blows. I wanted to scream that I hadn't actually quit my job, that I was on leave, but the words stuck in my throat. What was the point? They'd already made up their minds about who I was. As I walked out of the restaurant, I could hear Tom continuing his tirade. "She lives off my hard work and then has the audacity to question my decisions. Can you believe it?" The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, tears finally spilling over. I had never felt so humiliated, so angry, so done. I arrived at our apartment, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. The nanny looked up in surprise as I burst in, tear-stained and disheveled. I went to our bedroom and pulled out my suitcase. With mechanical movements, I began packing my clothes, toiletries, and a few precious mementos. I left a note for Tom, brief and to the point. "I'm staying at a hotel. Don't try to contact me." The hotel room was small and impersonal, but it felt like a sanctuary. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling the weight of expectations and disappointment crushing me. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, replaying the evening's events in my mind. By morning, I knew what I had to do. As soon as the law offices opened, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Sarah Garcia came highly recommended, known for her fair but firm approach. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, shaking my hand, "tell me what brings you here today." I poured out my story, the gradual erosion of my marriage, the financial betrayal, the public humiliation. Sarah listened attentively, taking notes. "Based on what you've told me," she said when I finished, "you have a strong case for divorce. Your husband's actions with the joint account are particularly concerning. Let's draft the initial paperwork." Over the next few days, I threw myself into creating a new life. I found a small apartment, not far from my office. I called my boss and explained the situation, asking to end my leave early. She was understanding and welcomed me back with open arms. As I settled into my new routine, I hoped for an amicable divorce. I wasn't out for revenge. I just wanted what was fair. I suggested mediation to Tom, thinking it would be the quickest and least painful way to end things. "I'm not asking for much," I told him during our first session. "Just return the money you spent on Sarah's car, and we'll split the remaining joint account 50-50. Tom scoffed. "Return the money? That car was a gift to my sister. You're being ridiculous." The mediator tried to intervene, but it was clear Tom wasn't budging. After 3 fruitless sessions, I realized we'd have to go to court. The next few months were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and court appearances. Tom fought me every step of the way, painting me as a gold digger trying to rob his poor sister of her much-needed vehicle. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge made her ruling. The court finds that Mr. Johnson's use of joint funds to purchase a vehicle for his sister, without the consent of his spouse, was illegal. Mr. Johnson is ordered to reimburse Mrs. Johnson for half the value of the vehicle, as well as legal fees. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't about the money. It was about justice, about having my voice heard and my rights recognized. Tom's face was a mask of fury as we left the courthouse. "I hope you're happy," he spat. "You've gotten your pound of flesh, you greedy, petty woman." Over the next few weeks, Tom complied with the court order, transferring the money to my account. I later learned he'd had to take out a loan to cover it, but I couldn't bring myself to feel guilty. He'd made his choices, and now we both had to live with the consequences. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I had settled into a comfortable routine. My small apartment had become a haven, filled with peace and the simple joys I'd forgotten during my tumultuous marriage. I'd rekindled old friendships, thrown myself into my work, and even started a small herb garden on my balcony. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard an unexpected knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I approached cautiously and peered through the peephole. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Tom standing there, looking disheveled and anxious. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the door. "Kristen," Tom said, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside to let him in. He looked around my apartment, taking in the cozy, organized space. "You look good," he said softly. "The place looks nice." "Thanks," I replied, my guard up. "What brings you here, Tom?" He sank onto my couch, running his hands through his hair. I messed up, Kristen. I see that now. I came to apologize and, well, to ask for your help." I sat in the armchair across from him, waiting silently for him to continue. "I lost my job," he blurted out. "The company downsized, and I was let go. I'm still paying off the loan for Sarah's car, and I'm barely making ends meet. Sarah, she refuses to sell the car or get a job. Says she's not ready yet." A part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction at hearing this, but I pushed it aside. "I'm sorry to hear that, Tom, but I'm not sure how I can help." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "The apartment is a disaster. Sarah doesn't clean, and the kids are out of control. The landlord's threatening to evict us because of the noise and mess. I realize now that you were right about everything. Sarah's not just going through a rough patch, she's taking advantage. And I let her." I sat there, taking in his words. The vindication I felt was bittersweet. Yes, I had been right. But at what cost? "Kristen," Tom continued, his voice breaking, "I know I don't deserve it, but I was hoping maybe we could start over." I've learned my lesson. I miss you, miss us. Maybe with your help, we could fix things. For a moment, I was transported back to the early days of our marriage. The love, the dreams we shared, the future we'd planned together. But then I remembered the betrayal, the humiliation, the months of feeling invisible and unvalued. I took a deep breath. Tom, I appreciate your apology, and I'm sorry you're going through a tough time. But I can't go back. His face fell. But Kristen, I've changed. I see things clearly now. I shook my head gently. The thing is, Tom, I've changed too. These past few months have shown me what I'm capable of, what I deserve. If you betrayed me once, who's to say you wouldn't do it again when things get tough? I wouldn't, he insisted. I've learned my lesson. Maybe you have, I conceded, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm happier now. I've found freedom in being on my own, in making my own choices without having to consider a partner who doesn't value my input. Tom's shoulders slumped. So that's it? There's no chance for us? I stood up, signaling the end of our conversation. I think it's best if you go, Tom. I truly hope things get better for you, but I'm not the solution to your problems. You need to stand on your own 2 feet and make your own choices. He nodded slowly, getting to his feet. At the door, he turned to me one last time. I really am sorry, Kristen, for everything. I know, I said softly. Goodbye, Tom. As I closed the door behind him, I leaned against it, letting out a long breath. A mix of emotions swirled within me. Sadness for the dreams we'd once shared, a touch of schadenfreude at Tom's comeuppance, but most of all, an overwhelming sense of relief and freedom.
Then one day, a new manager, a transfer from the head office, joined our branch. She was a smart-looking woman in her late 20s, dressed sharply in a suit. Unlike my emotion, her transfer was part of grooming her for a future leadership role. My name is Sarah. I look forward to working with you. She introduced herself, exuding the air of an elite with a confident demeanor. Initially, she seemed a bit stiff, but as she settled in, she began to show more of her youthful, vibrant smile. However, just because she has moved, it didn't change my job in any way. Even though she was my direct superior, there was little interaction between us, given my sidelined position. Sarah held individual meetings with all employees soon after arriving. When it was my turn, I explained my work situation as it was. Sarah frowned and seemed to want to say something, but she didn't, and the meeting ended without any changes to my situation. In the end, my work and life remained unchanged. I spend my days doing meaningless work and head home once it's time to clock out. At home, all I do is eat and then go to sleep. My daily life hasn't changed at all from before. With so little work to do, I even spend my breaks leisurely. I often finish my lunch quickly and then take walks around the office to pass the time. Lately, I've noticed Sarah frequently using her phone in secluded spots. Being a young woman, she might be in touch with a boyfriend. However, Sarah always looked troubled during these moments. Wouldn't she look happier or more excited if she were talking to her boyfriend? I found it a bit curious. But even though I've seen this scene many times, I figured it was none of my business. I hadn't paid much attention to it before. But yesterday, I saw Sarah again, and she looked even more troubled than usual. I just couldn't get her distressed face out of my mind. Even if she had a serious problem, it's unlikely she would turn to someone like me for help. So I decided to carry on as usual. The next day, I arrived at the office first, as always. If there's one good thing about being transferred here, it's that I've been able to lead a healthier lifestyle with an early-to-bed, early-to-rise routine and leaving work on time. My health is in top shape. Living alone, I cook my own meals, not just once, but every day. Bringing my homemade lunch and starting the day by wiping down my desk in an empty office has become my daily ritual. Previously, after I arrived at work, William, who is nearing retirement, would usually come in next. But that order changed after Sarah moved. And today, as usual, Sarah came in a while after I did. I greeted her but noticed her complexion looked worse than usual today. Her face was particularly pale. While watching her, I suddenly realized something. Come to think of it, she used to smile so much at first, but lately I haven't seen her smile at all. Concerned about her extremely pale complexion, I was about to suggest that she go home when I heard an "ee" from her desk. At that moment, William arrived, and both he and I turned our gaze towards Sarah. In the direction of our gaze, there was Sarah, pale as a ghost and trembling violently. She was shaking so uncontrollably that the phone she was holding fell to the floor with a dull thud. Seeing Sarah in such a state, I instinctively rushed over to her and asked, "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Then I saw the screen of her phone. It was receiving notifications in real time, and the chat screen was filled with a one-sided barrage of harsh messages, aggressive stickers and emojis. Seeing the chat screen brought back unpleasant memories for me. But I knew I had to prioritize Sarah right now. I pushed those resurfacing memories aside and asked her gently, "Can I take a look at your phone?" Trembling and tearful with fear, Sarah nodded and handed me her phone. Despite being in shock, upon looking at the messages sent to Sarah, I saw an endless stream of texts filled with harsh insults, derogatory remarks, and mocking content, all expressed in the harshest terms imaginable. Towards the end, the messages took a disturbing turn, clearly implying harm, and it felt incredibly dangerous. Although memories from my past threatened to overwhelm me, I made a conscious effort to stay calm and proceeded to ask Sarah a few questions. "Do you know this person?" She shook her head in response to my question. "Any idea who it could be?" As I continued, she bit her lip and answered, "I received comments from this person on a different social media platform. It started off normally but gradually became more extreme. I got scared and blocked them, and then this happened. They've also spread lies about me to my friends and on forums. I'm so scared I can barely sleep." Sarah, seemingly at her limit, buried her exhausted face in her hands. Seeing Sarah like that, I felt a pain in my heart, as if I was looking at my past self. At the same time, I decided I couldn't let her go through what I did, and resolved to help her. "Let's fight back," I said. Sarah looked puzzled at my words, but I was confident I could help her. I understood her pain, sadness, fear, anger, and despair better than anyone. As more employees started arriving, they cast curious looks at the unusual pairing of Sarah and me. Despite feeling the weight of their stares, leaving was not an option for me. Even though Sarah seemed confused, I pointed to her personal computer and asked, "Do you have the history saved?" It might have been harsh to press her in her dazed state, but time was of the essence, and we couldn't afford to waste any. Given the situation, I knew we had to methodically address what needed to be done. So I began giving Sarah instructions. Despite being sidelined at the office, now I was once a high-flying executive at the head office, just a step away from the boardroom. Having studied how to lead and motivate subordinates as a manager, I knew how to get Sarah to take action, despite her current state of shock. I instructed her to first file a deletion request with the S administrators. We aimed to get the situation to a point where we could identify the perpetrator in accordance with the terms specified in the service agreement. Then we printed out all the history and posts from the SAS and forums where Sarah had been harassed and compiled information, such as URIs and email addresses. "Let's go to the police together," I suggested. By then, Sarah had calmed down somewhat, and though she seemed puzzled by my efficiency, she nodded in agreement and followed me to the police station. At the police station, I explained the situation and the measures we had taken, and Sarah presented the evidence to the officers. I emphasized to the police, who didn't seem to grasp the severity of the situation, the rapid escalation of the harasser messages, the repetitive use of certain phrases, and the extensive collection of Sarah's information indicating a high likelihood of habitual stalking and a clear threat of physical violence. The officers, struck by the seriousness of our case, even questioned our relationship. Despite the rumors that might arise about a young woman being involved with an older guy like me, I couldn't help but deny it in a panic, which ended up amusing both the police officer and Sarah. Considering the current situation, the culprit hasn't been identified yet. Moreover, the chances of resolution seem slim given we're dealing with a small local police station. All we could do was carry out whatever measures were possible at the moment. But I knew the importance of these actions all too well. After leaving the police station, I introduced Sarah to a trustworthy lawyer on our way back to the office. It was a necessary step for officially establishing the case. Sarah seemed puzzled by my extensive involvement. "Who exactly are you, Michael? Why are you going to such lengths for me?" It was a natural question given our nearly non-existent prior interaction. Though my acquaintance with Sarah was brief, I found nothing dubious about her character, nor did she seem like someone who would create enemies. That's why I felt it would be terribly unfair for her bright future to be ruined by vile individuals. I didn't want her to go through the same experiences I had, but unable to convey this to Sarah, I awkwardly brushed it off. I just happened to know a thing or two. Eventually, the man behind the harassment and threats towards Sarah was apprehended. He was a complete stranger to her, but apparently the SNS platform had notified him that they were a good match. Using the information from Sarah's SNS, he began to obsessively project his ideal image onto her. The content he posted on forums portraying himself as an ex-boyfriend made me acutely aware of the dangers of sharing personal information online with strangers. After the ordeal with Sarah was resolved, I returned to my routine at the office. However, to my surprise, I wasn't the first to arrive that day. When I got to the office, Sarah was already at her desk, greeting me with a bright smile. "Good morning," she said. Initially surprised, I too returned the greeting with a smile upon seeing her carefree smile. As I was about to sit at my desk, Sarah marched up to me. "Could I have a moment?" she said, pointing outside. I had thought our paths wouldn't cross again after resolving the issue. I was wondering what was going on, but I followed her lead. We stopped in front of the bulletin board used for company announcements. Sarah, with childlike excitement, unveiled a notice with a tada. I braced myself for potential bad news apprehensively. I turned my gaze to the notice board where a temporary personnel announcement was posted. My name, current position, and a transfer to the head office's new CSIRT department were detailed in the center. Sarah explained the new department to me with a face beaming with joy, as if to say the surprise was a huge success. The CSIRT department, she elaborated, was established as a specialized division within the company, extending beyond internal security to focus specifically on issues like information leaks. She then revealed her secret. "Actually, I'm the niece of President Charles. Though I was hired on my own merit, it's undeniable that my situation greatly influenced the establishment of this department." She shared the backstory of the department's inception and chuckled mischievously, seeing my astonishment. Sarah seemed pleased. She then shared something Mr. Charles had told her. "It's true. I asked for your help, but beyond that, Mr. Charles has long wished to bring you back to the head office. Despite the difficulty in overturning decisions in such a large company, he regrets exacerbating the hardship of a valued employee. As a family member and someone you've helped, I sincerely apologize. I'm truly sorry." With that, Sarah apologized to me. Indeed, I was once on a fast track at the head office, well regarded by Mr. Charles. However, amidst my rapid progress, an incident occurred in the neighborhood where a girl went missing. Of course, I was aware of the news, but I largely brushed it off as someone else's problem. At that time, I was living in a suburban house with my wife and 2 daughters. However, I was practically only coming home to sleep, so I knew nothing about the neighborhood or the people living in it. Therefore, it should have been an incident that had nothing to do with me. But sometime after the disappearance, my name was somehow posted on a popular bulletin board as a suspect. Before I knew it, my address, family, social media accounts, and workplace were all exposed, and I was condemned as a criminal by the public without my knowledge. My family and I were harassed by the media and onlookers to the point that we couldn't even return home. I was suspended from work and had to attend police inquiries. For a while, my family and I took refuge in my in-laws' house far away. But after a few weeks, even my in-laws, who initially welcomed us warmly, started to look at me with suspicion. Feeling the awkwardness, I discussed leaving with my wife, but she and my daughters couldn't even look me in the eye. Realizing I had no place left, I silently packed my bags and moved to a hotel alone. It was then that I truly realized how much I had neglected my family bonds by focusing solely on work. But it was too late. Since then, I've been hiding alone in cheap hotels like a real criminal. I kept wondering how long this life would last, constantly hunted by the worst thoughts. Months later, the girl's case was suddenly resolved. The culprit was a university student from a distant state who had contacted her through a website for runaways. He lured her to his home through clever manipulation on social media, and when she couldn't find her there, of course, neither the girl nor the arrested student had any acquaintance or relation to me. When I saw the news of the case being solved, I broke down and wept on the spot. While I was relieved the case was solved, I couldn't help but wonder what my life had been all about until now. Overwhelmed by various emotions, I cried all day long. The next day, though still in a daze, I regained my original vitality and decided to take action. I rushed to a law firm offering free consultations and shared my story. The lawyer I met was familiar with my case and became a strong ally, promising to ensure I received justice. From there, everything moved quickly. We rallied public support, pressured the providers and administrators, and quickly obtained information on the malicious party who spread my personal information, filing a lawsuit. The man who ruined my life was arrested easily. I didn't recognize the culprit's name, but when I mentioned it to my wife, who had just returned home, her face went pale. It turns out the man was her high school classmate. They had reconnected at a reunion and had been in touch since, with my wife often sharing her complaints and frustrations about me with him. My wife insisted she hadn't cheated, but at that point, it didn't matter to me anymore. My feelings for her had completely cooled. Of course, it's not entirely her fault. The breakdown of a marriage is often due to both parties. This situation was a result of my neglecting my family. I realized this through the ordeal, and although my wife insisted she wasn't to blame until the end, I didn't blame her. And as for my daughters, who I did love in my own way, they didn't warm up to me much either, having spent so much time with a mother who disliked me. So our parting was over in an instant. It was a surprisingly abrupt end to my family, but the case had been resolved after all, feeling motivated by the resolution. I decided to return to work and give it my all. However, life wasn't that simple. Upon my return, I was met with a transfer to a small rural branch office, a clear demotion. This personnel change had been issued before the true culprit and the person who spread my personal information were caught. But as far as the company was concerned, it was better to err on the side of caution. I was expected to take responsibility for causing a stir. Having just returned and faced this decree, I even considered quitting. But with a trial still pending, and essentially nothing else left for me, I accepted the transfer. So, I was assigned to the branch despite being viewed as an unwelcome presence. As if where there's smoke, there's fire, I continued to be part of the company, eventually becoming the man who doesn't work. Although I was reminiscing about the bitter memories of the past, I couldn't help but smile at the story about Mr. Charles that was conveyed to me by Sarah. I indeed had my concerns about the treatment I received at the time. However, I wasn't fired or demoted, and I've heard it was because Mr. Charles opposed the transfer. Until the end, considering his kindness. Looking back, I can now say that life in the countryside was enjoyable. Upon hearing my words, Sarah timidly showed a smile. As we were talking, a woman approached us idly and said, "Excuse me." She was Lisa from the same department, but we had never really spoken before, and she stood a bit away from us, listening to our conversation. Lisa approached us with a tearful face and apologized. "I think I was initially unfriendly to you, and yet you helped me in many ways." I realized it was a misunderstanding, but I never said anything. "I'm truly sorry." It turned out that not only Lisa, but also William was there and, speaking out, he joined in with an apology. "Well, I didn't really mind, but I'm sorry I couldn't be of any help." Feeling bashful from their apologies, I ended up making a joke. "What is this? Is today apologizing to me?" Then Sarah, with a bright smile, suggested, "Should we make it a day? Let's invite Mr. Charles, too." Seeing me flood, all four of us burst into laughter. I never thought I'd see a day when I could laugh like this again. It's a secret that I felt a little teary-eyed. A month after this incident, after a surprisingly comfortable farewell party at the branch, I found myself in the president's office at the headquarters. Mr. Charles, as vigorous as ever, was there, and I felt warmth in my heart to meet him again. Then, Mr. Charles personally explained the significance and purpose of my new department and the expectations for it after its establishment. Not many have experienced a life like yours. However, there will continue to be instances where innocent people like you and your niece suffer. It's presumptuous for a company that couldn't be there for you at that time to say this, but it's precisely because of the regret from that time that I strongly felt the need for a department that can protect not only the company, but also its employees. I believe you, who understand my requests and the meaning of the department, are the right person to lead it. I'm counting on you." Feeling a surge of resolve at his words, I firmly responded, "Yes." And so, I returned to the headquarters as the head of the new department. I was warmly welcomed by those who knew me from before. I received offers of cooperation from many people, and the feelings of disappointment and emptiness I had when I left seemed to finally disappear. I thought I had no allies, no place to belong, but I realized that there were always people who stood by me. Life is unpredictable. What seemed smooth just a moment ago can suddenly plunge into darkness. Conversely, when you think it's all over, you might find joy in unexpected places and pleasant surprises waiting for you. Having gone through various experiences, I've come to truly understand what life is about. Just as harsh natural conditions can create beautiful landscapes, I'd like to think that my experiences have added some depth to me as a person. Now I stand in front of the new department that has become my place once again. Slapping my cheeks with both hands to psych myself up, I say, "All right," out loud and step into my new department, ready to start anew.
My name is Barbara, and when I was born, my mother was only 19 years old, hardly older than a child. After she graduated from high school, she married my dad, and I was born a year later. When I was growing up, I recall that strangers would frequently mistake us for sisters, which always made Mom proud. I was captivated by her commitment to appearance and would watch her get dressed every morning. She never neglected her beauty routine, even in times of financial hardship. Mom would simply roll her eyes and remark, "You married a beautiful woman, didn't you?" When my dad would occasionally gripe about the price of her goods. Beauty requires upkeep. Until I hit 10, everything looked to be normal enough. The comeback began at that point, or perhaps I only became aware of it then. Their words would reverberate through our flimsy walls, but the arguments would start after I went to bed. This continued for months until Dad simply stopped coming home one day. Mom told me they were divorcing as we were sitting on our beige couch, the one with a small wine stain that she was trying so hard to cover up with a throw pillow. But why? My voice was small and frightened as I asked. "Sometimes grown-ups just can't live together anymore, honey," she replied. She appeared to be preparing her next move, though as her eyes were already far away. Everything will work out as long as you stay with me. You'll see. The procession of uncles began at that point. With the same justification, Mom would leave me off at Aunt Sarah's place more and more often. Mommy needs some adult time, sweetie. You get it, don't you? I nodded even though I didn't fully understand. Aunt Sarah would make these trips enjoyable by helping me with my studies or baking cookies with me. However, I wasn't a moron. I was aware that Mom was dating men in an attempt to find my new daddy, as she would occasionally refer to it after having a few glasses of wine. Before learning that Mom had a daughter, the first committed boyfriend dated for 3 months. I recall hearing the altercation through the wall of my bedroom. He screamed, "You've been lying to me this whole time." A child? Sandra, really? Mom begged, I was going to tell you. I just needed to find the right time. The right time was 3 months ago, he stated. Then the door slammed. Mom came into my room that night and gave me a big hug. Whispering, "It's just you and me against the world, baby," she said. I knew that wasn't entirely accurate, though, even at that young age. It wasn't us versus the world. Rather, it was Mom versus aging, loneliness, and acknowledging that life hadn't gone as expected. Up until I was 16, Mom's lovers kept coming and going. Everything changed at that point. Robert was introduced to her. He was unique from the beginning. I can still clearly recall the day she told him about me, anticipating the typical response. Mom was toying with her napkin uncomfortably as we were all at a restaurant. She trembled as she began, "Robert, there's something I need to tell you. My daughter is mine. Barbara is 16 years old." Holding my breath, I waited for him to excuse himself and go. Instead, a sincere smile appeared on his face, and he shook my hand across the table. He said, "I've been wondering when I'd get to meet you," with warmth. "Your mom's phone background is a picture of you two together." That was the first surprise. Mom hadn't deleted all traces of me from her phone this time. The second surprise was how natural everything felt after that. Robert didn't try too hard to be my dad or pretend we were instantly family. He just treated me like a person. "Hey Barbara, want to help me fix up the old Mustang in the garage?" He'd ask. Or, "What do you think about these paint colors for the living room?" 6 months later, they got married. It was a small ceremony, but it felt right. For the first time in years, I felt like we might actually be a normal family. Before I even turned 17, Mom announced she was pregnant. Emma came along just a few months after my 17th birthday, and Lucy followed almost exactly a year later. When I graduated high school, Dad came through with his promise to pay for my college tuition. "You earned this, kiddo," he told me as we looked through university brochures. "Pick wherever you want to go." I chose State University, 3 hours away. By then, Emma was 2, and Lucy had just turned 1. Robert was an amazing father to them both. The first year of college was a whirlwind of new experiences, but I came home regularly to visit. That's when things started to shift. Every single weekend I visited, without fail, Mom and Robert would have plans. "Barbara, honey, you don't mind watching the girls, right?" Mom would say, already putting on her earrings. "We haven't had a date night in ages, and you know how exhausting 2 little ones can be." "But Mom, I was hoping to catch up with Ashley and Kim while I'm home." I'd say, "We were planning to see a movie." "Oh, you can do that next time." The girls have been so excited to see their big sister. You wouldn't want to disappoint them, would you? She'd give me that look, the one that made me feel guilty for even thinking about my own plans. Robert would look apologetic, but wouldn't say anything. So there I'd be, weekend after weekend, making baby formula, changing endless diapers, and trying to keep 2 toddlers entertained. Emma was in her terrible 2s, throwing tantrums at the drop of a hat, while Lucy was just learning to walk and needed constant supervision. I loved my sisters, I really did. But I was 19, juggling a full course load, and my weekends at home had become exhausting babysitting shifts. Between the midnight feedings, the diaper changes, and the constant vigilance needed to keep two toddlers safe, I was more tired going back to campus than when I arrived. I sat down with Mom and Robert one Sunday evening after putting the girls to bed. "I need to talk to you both," I said. "I love Emma and Lucy, but I can't keep being the default babysitter every time I come home." Mom's face immediately darkened. "What do you mean? They're your sisters. Don't you want to spend time with them?" "Of course I do," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I'm also a college student. I need some time to see my friends to rest. Every weekend I come home, I leave more exhausted than when I arrived." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "She has a point, Sandra. Barbara is still young. She should be able to enjoy her college years. We could hire a babysitter for our date nights." He continued, placing a hand on Mom's arm. "I know a couple of reliable people through work." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived. Mom pulled her arm away from Robert. "A stranger watching our children," she snapped. Then turning to me, she added, "Barbara, I can't believe you're doing this. You're being selfish, just like your father." That was the last weekend I spent at home during college. I still called to check on the girls, but I stopped making the 3-hour drive back. Mom's guilt-tripping texts became a regular thing. "Your sisters keep asking where you are. I guess family doesn't mean much to you anymore." 4 years passed. I graduated with my business degree and landed a junior management position back in my hometown. The salary wasn't great, but it was enough to rent a small one-bedroom apartment. I thought maybe, with some distance and independence, things with Mom would improve. Then the bomb dropped. Mom and Robert were getting divorced. No warning, no explanation. Just Mom calling to tell me it was over. The girls, now 5 and 4, would stay with her, and Robert agreed to pay generous alimony. I should have seen what was coming next. It started with a casual request. "Barbara, could you watch the girls this Saturday? I have an appointment." That appointment turned out to be a date. Soon, history began repeating itself in a way that made my stomach turn. Every weekend, without fail, Mom would show up at my apartment with Emma and Lucy in tow. I was putting in 60-hour weeks at work, taking every extra shift I could get, determined to climb the corporate ladder. My rare days off should have been for catching up on sleep, meeting friends for coffee, or maybe even dating. Instead, I found myself building pillow forts and mediating sisterly squabbles while Mom was out living her life, as she put it. The worst part? I couldn't say no. Not when Emma would look up at me with those big brown eyes, asking if we could make cookies together. Not when Lucy would curl up in my lap with her favorite storybook. They were innocent in all this, just like I had been at their age. One sleepless night after another weekend of babysitting, I found myself scrolling through Mom's social media. What I saw made my blood run cold. Her profile was filled with selfies at bars, restaurants, and yoga studios, but Emma and Lucy were nowhere to be found. It was like they didn't exist in her online world. I did find one photo of myself with her, taken at a cafe last summer. The caption read, "Such a lovely lunch date. Can you guess if this is my sister or daughter? Forever 21, good genes." The comments made me want to scream. "Omdi, Sandra, definitely your sister. You look way too young to have a daughter that age girl. You look younger than her. What's your secret?" "Sisters for sure. You're aging backwards." I laughed, but it was hollow. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. Mom was doing exactly what she'd done with me years ago, hiding her children to appear more attractive to potential partners. History wasn't just repeating itself, it was getting worse. Robert would call me regularly to check on the girls. He was still such a good father, always asking about their schoolwork, their friends, and if they needed anything. "How are they really doing, Barbara?" He'd ask, concern evident in his voice. Sandra doesn't tell me much anymore. I hated lying to him. "They're good, Robert. Mom's taking good care of them." The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but Mom's warning echoed in my head. Don't you dare tell Robert anything. He'll just try to take the girls away. Then came the day that changed everything. I stopped by Mom's house unannounced, arms loaded with bags of fresh fruit and treats for the girls. The moment I walked in, Emma and Lucy descended on the food like they hadn't eaten in days. Something felt off. I walked to the kitchen and opened the fridge. The sight made me sick. A half-empty bottle of milk, some condiments, and not much else. The cabinets were equally bare. "Mom," I screamed, storming into her bedroom, where she was trying on new clothes. "Why is there no food in this house? What are the girls eating?" She lifted her chin, showing off her newly tightened neck. "Don't be so dramatic, Barbara. I had to get some work done. The alimony only stretches so far, and I need to look young if I want to find a good man. The girls can survive on simple meals for a few weeks." I felt something snap inside me. "Are you serious? You spent their food money on plastic surgery." "It's an investment in our future," she replied calmly. "Once I find a wealthy husband, the girls will have everything they need." "I'm calling Robert right now," I threatened, pulling out my phone. Mom's face crumpled. "Please, Barbara, I promise it won't happen again. I'll go grocery shopping tomorrow. Just don't tell Robert, please." I put my phone away, but my hands were shaking with rage. "I mean it, Mom. If I ever find out you're neglecting them again, I'm telling Robert everything. No more secrets, no more lies. And you can kiss your alimony goodbye." Just over a month after the refrigerator incident, Mom showed up at my apartment looking pale and distressed. Her usual perfect makeup was missing, and her hair hung limp around her face. "Barbara, honey, I need your help," she said, her voice weak. "I have to go to the hospital for emergency surgery today. I need you to watch the girls for a few days." I felt my heart race. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "The doctors found something," she said vaguely, pressing a hand to her stomach. "I need to go right away. Please, I have no one else to turn to." "What about a professional babysitter?" I suggested. "I can pay for one myself. Someone who does this full-time cold." "No," Mom cut me off sharply, then softened her voice. "No strangers. I don't trust them with my babies." "Okay, well, what about Robert? He's their father. Or Aunt Sarah." Mom shook her head. "Robert's not answering his phone, and Sarah's out of town on business. Please, Barbara, I'm desperate." I looked at Emma and Lucy, standing quietly beside her, clutching their little backpacks. What choice did I have? "Let me call my boss," I sighed, already reaching for my phone. I had to use my unpaid personal days, but at least my job was secure. The first day was exhausting. The girls seemed more unruly than usual, probably picking up on the stress of the situation. Emma threw tantrums over everything: the wrong color cup, Lucy touching her toys, the sandwich cut in squares instead of triangles. Lucy followed her sister's lead, and soon I had 2 screaming children on my hands more often than not. By the second day, I was running on fumes. Between cooking meals, doing laundry, cleaning up endless messes, and trying to keep them entertained, I barely had time to breathe. I'd just gotten them down for a nap when my phone rang. "Hey, Barbara, it was my friend Kelly, who lived near Mom's house. Some party your mom's throwing. There's loud music, tons of cars parked outside, and they've got these gorgeous string lights everywhere. Must have taken hours to set up. Is it someone's birthday?" "That's impossible," I said, my voice shaking. "My mom's in the hospital having surgery. The girls are here with me. You must be looking at the wrong house." "Barbara, I'm literally standing at my window right now. I can see your mom's red front door from here. The music is so loud I can hear it inside my house. There's definitely a party happening." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I tried calling Mom 5 times, straight to voicemail every time. Something wasn't right, and I was going to figure out what. I pulled up Mom's social media page. Nothing new there, just the usual selfies and inspirational quotes about living your best life. But then I remembered her best friend Janet's obsession with posting everything live. I clicked over to Janet's page, and there it was, a live stream. Oh my god, you guys, Janet's voice blared through my speakers. I am so excited to be here celebrating my bestie's engagement. Look at this gorgeous party she put together. The camera panned around my mother's living room, now transformed with twinkling lights and flowers. Dozens of people were mingling, champagne glasses in hand. My stomach lurched when I saw Mom in the background, radiant in a new red dress. Nothing like the sick woman who'd shown up at my door. I can't believe this, I whispered to myself. The girls were still playing quietly in the next room. I needed to act fast. I called Aunt Sarah first. Sarah, Mom said you were out of town on business. What? No, I'm home. Why? I quickly explained the situation. Can you please come watch the girls for a few hours? I need to deal with something. Of course, honey. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Your mother's gone too far this time. Next, I called Robert. He picked up on the first ring. Barbara, is everything okay? Not answering your phone, huh? I said bitterly. That's what Mom told me when I suggested calling you about watching the girls. What are you talking about? Sandra hasn't called me in weeks. I took a deep breath and told him everything. The supposed emergency surgery, the girls staying with me, and what I just discovered on the live stream. She's throwing an engagement party. His voice was dangerously quiet. I'm picking you up in 10 minutes. Sarah's watching the girls. Yes, she's on her way. Good. It's time we had a family meeting. Those 10 minutes felt like hours. I paced the floor, alternating between rage and disbelief. When Robert's car pulled up, I was already waiting outside. The drive to Mom's house was tense. Robert's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I knew something wasn't right. He kept saying, "The way she's been acting with the girls lately, I should have pushed harder." We could hear the music from halfway down the block. Cars lined both sides of the street, and light spilled from every window of the house. Robert parked right in the driveway, blocking in several other cars. Through the front window, we could see everything. Mom was in the center of the room, wrapped in the arms of a man I'd never seen before. He looked young, much younger than her. As we watched, she pulled him into a passionate kiss while her friends cheered and raised their glasses. To Sandra and Mark, someone shouted, "May you have the fairy tale ending you deserve." If they only knew what that fairy tale was costing her children. Robert and I walked straight into the house without knocking. Mom stood frozen in the middle of the room, her champagne glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the hardwood floor. Barbara, Robert? Her face went from flushed to pale in seconds. What are you doing here? Funny, I said, my voice carrying across the now quieting room. I was about to ask you the same thing. Shouldn't you be in the hospital having emergency surgery? The young man beside her, Mark, I presumed, looked confused. Surgery? Sandy, what's she talking about? Oh, you haven't met. I stepped forward. I'm Barbara, her daughter, the one she apparently didn't want to invite to her engagement party. Mark's face lit up, completely misreading the situation. Your daughter? Sandy, why didn't you invite her to our party? This is wonderful. He extended his hand warmly. I've been so excited to learn more about your life. Oh, then you're going to love this, I said, pulling out my phone. I showed him a recent photo of Mom with Emma and Lucy at the park, one of the rare ones she hadn't deleted. Here are your future stepdaughters. Emma's 5 and Lucy's 4. The color drained from Mark's face. He turned to my mother. You have 2 more children, small children. Mom stepped forward, reaching for his arm. Mark, darling, I can explain. Explain what? His voice cracked. That you hid 2 small children from me after I specifically told you I'm not ready for kids. I'm 28, Sandra. I told you I wanted to travel, build my career first. They're hardly ever around, Mom pleaded. Their father takes them most of the time. Actually, Robert cut in, his voice ice cold. That's not true. Barbara's been watching them every weekend while you go dating. And apparently, now you're dumping them on her with fake medical emergencies so you can throw engagement parties. The guest started edging toward the door, sensing the impending explosion. Mark looked like he'd been slapped. "This is insane," he said, shaking his head. He backed away from Mom. "The wedding's off, Sandra. I can't even look at you right now." Within minutes, the house had cleared out. Mom stood in the middle of her decorated living room, mascara running down her face. "How could you?" She screamed at me. "You've ruined everything, my one chance at happiness." "Happiness?" Robert's voice boomed. "What about our daughter's happiness? The daughters you've been neglecting while you chase yours." He turned to me. "Barbara told me about the empty fridge, Sandra. About the plastic surgery. First thing tomorrow, I'm calling my lawyer. I'm filing for full custody." Mom's face contorted. "You can't." "I can, and I will. You won't have to hide them anymore, Sandra. They'll live with me full-time. And you can forget about the alimony. You've made it very clear how you're spending it. And it's not on our children." The drive back to my apartment was silent. When we arrived, Emma and Lucy ran to their father, throwing their arms around his legs. "Daddy, are we having a sleepover at your house?" Robert knelt down, hugging them close. "More than a sleepover, sweethearts. You're going to come live with Daddy now." The girls cheered, and my heart broke a little. They didn't even ask about their mother. The aftermath of the engagement party exploded, playing out exactly as I should have expected. Mom took to social media like a warrior going to battle. Her posts started appearing everywhere. My own daughter betrayed me out of jealousy. She couldn't stand to see her mother happy and in love. Toxic daughter, betrayal. I couldn't stay silent. Under each post, I left simple factual comments. "You told me you were having emergency surgery while throwing an engagement party. You spent your children's food money on plastic surgery. You left your daughters with me every weekend while dating." The family started taking sides, but unlike what Mom expected, most of them stood with me. Aunt Sarah was the first to speak up. "Sandra, we've watched you neglect your children for years." Barbara was protecting her sisters. Then came the trial. I'll never forget sitting in that cold courtroom, watching Mom try to maintain her usual perfect facade, while Robert's lawyer methodically destroyed it. The financial records were damning, page after page of expenses laid bare on the projector screen. $5,000. Botox and fillers. $8,000. Breast augmentation. $3,000. Laser treatments. $2,500. Personal trainer. $1,800. Designer clothing. And then, in stark contrast, $200. Children's clothing, 3 months. $1,150. School supplies, $300. Groceries, monthly average. When it was my turn to testify, Mom wouldn't look at me. I told the court everything. The empty fridge, the constant babysitting under false pretenses, the way she hid the girls from potential boyfriends. The judge's decision was swift and unequivocal. Mom was stripped of her parental rights. She stormed out of the courtroom without looking back. 6 months have passed since then. Mom no longer talks to me because I've betrayed her. She still occasionally posts about me, describing how I ruined her life and what a horrible daughter I am. I no longer read them. I've heard through rumors that she's currently living with her buddy Janet. Mom had to leave when Robert moved into the house he had been paying for. I recently told Robert, as I watched Emma and Lucy play in his backyard, I think it's easier for her now. She is no longer required to conceal any children. He gave me a shoulder squeeze. What they lose, we gain. He's correct, too. With Robert, the girls are flourishing. Despite their abandonment concerns and therapy, they are content. Toys and artwork abound in their rooms. There is always food in the refrigerator. Their father never misses a recital or a game, and they play soccer and take dance lessons. We truly get to enjoy our time together when I come over for supper twice a week. Lucy practiced reading aloud last night while Emma showed me her science project. There is no pressure, not guilty. No coercion. Family being family. I sometimes question whether Mom will ever understand what she lost in her never-ending quest for romance in youth. However, I no longer have that issue. It is now my responsibility to be the big sister these kids deserve, to help them develop into strong, self-assured women who understand that their value isn't determined by their relationship status or outward appearance. Personally, I'm at last leading a life of my own. At work, I was promoted. The person I'm dating makes me chuckle. And I know I made the correct decision every time I see my sister's smiles when I visit.
You really have the nerve to show up with that face, huh? A former classmate is being ridiculed. Seeing her remaining silent and about to cry, I felt a surge of anger. Cut it out, will you? I'd immediately stepped in to defend my former classmate. When she looked up to face me, my heart skipped a beat. What's the matter? A farmer from the countryside trying to act cool or something. Now it was my turn to be mocked for being a farmer. She hasn't grown up a bit since high school. Thinking that, I smiled and patted my former classmate on the shoulder. Do you know who she really is? Right after, the tables turned dramatically due to the actions of my former classmate. I am Matthew Smith, a single man running a farm in a regional city. Our family has a long history of farming dating back to my great-grandfather's generation. Thus, we're quite large-scale and have a fair number of employees. Matthew, it's time to go harvest. Got it. Having helped with the family farming business since I was young, I've always taken pride in being a farmer. After graduating high school, I chose not to go to college and instead helped with the family business. Farming is complex. Listen, Matthew, farming is a battle against many elements. If you let your guard down even a little, you won't get good vegetables. The more effort we put in, the more the vegetables will respond. I was repeatedly taught the essence of farming by my grandparents and parents. Subject to the whims of weather and climate, any negligence would prevent the crops from growing well. It's a tough job, but it's genuinely rewarding to produce delicious vegetables. I want to incorporate various technologies for my generation. Our field is yours to do as you please now. That's right. Do it your way. I've put effort into modern agriculture, venturing into rare and challenging to grow vegetables. Thanks to this, our family is well known in the area. Matthew, someone came looking for that new vegetable you've been growing. Thank you, Michael. The person who called out to me is Michael Jones. He's one of the key supporters of our farm along with his wife. His wife is currently pregnant and on maternity leave. However, she sometimes shows up to help out without overexerting herself, for which I'm truly grateful. Well, I'm going to check on the veggies. Yes, please do. He's knowledgeable about rare vegetables and supports my ideas, helping to grow them together. That's why I can trust him with the work confidently. Matthew, I'll head to the field with the interns first. Thanks, I appreciate it. The next person to speak to me was Jacob Miller. He just graduated from college and started working in our fields. He is multilingual and has been leading the foreign agricultural training program we recently introduced. His kind nature has made him popular among the interns. All right, time for me to get to work too. With the help of many, I've been making delicious vegetables. I've been spending each day taking care of my vegetables when... Matthew, you've got a letter. Thanks. The letter was to inform me about a high school reunion. It seems that they are organizing a reunion for my grade from our high school. The venue this time is in New York. Usually, it would be held in our hometown, but many classmates had moved to New York for college and ended up working there. So it looks like it's going to be held in New York this time. I wonder if I'll see her in New York. The person that comes to mind is someone special to me, a classmate named Emily Williams. Maybe I'll get to see her since she had gone to New York. With that thought, I decided to make arrangements to attend. Emily, I need your help again today. Emily was known to be beautiful back in high school. However, she always looked down because of a large scar on her face. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. You're always such a big help, Matthew. You're always busy helping out at home, aren't you? I was interested in her. Emily was smart, so I made up the excuse of wanting her to check my homework to talk to her, and eventually, we became friends. You really have a way of teaching, Emily. Thank you. You're kind, Matthew. You think so? I think you're the kind one. The reason I started to take an interest in Emily was because of the presence of other classmates like Sarah Brown and her group. Matthew's family is a bunch of farmers. That's probably why he smells like soil. He's probably covered in mud every day. Because of my family farm, I was always ridiculed by Sarah and her flashy, popular group. To them, I would retort, "So what if we're farmers? It's because of farmers that you get to eat vegetables. Have you done anything significant enough to mock others?" I took pride in our farm, so I always fought back. Sarah and her group would laugh it off, saying, "It's just the truth." I suppose they found my constant comebacks somewhat annoying. Eventually, we became like cats and dogs. Interestingly, it was only them who ridiculed me. Other classmates didn't mock me. Sarah is annoying you again, huh? They're annoying, always bragging or putting others down. In fact, they distanced themselves from Sarah's group. Emily, with that scar on your face, I'm surprised you can come to school. If it were me, I'd be too embarrassed to show my face. They also ridiculed Emily for her appearance. Emily responded differently from me towards them. She just silently endured it, being a woman and having such a scar. Emily, there's something I don't understand about the homework. Could you help me? I just couldn't leave her alone, so I started talking to Emily and made sure I was there for her. In doing so, I was able to protect her from Sarah and her group, albeit slightly. What are you going to do after high school, Matthew? I'm not going to college. I plan to focus on farming. I have various things I want to do, and while my grandparents are still healthy, I want to get their opinions. What about you, Emily? I'm planning to go to a university in New York. Since then, I haven't seen Emily, who went off to university in New York. However, I occasionally heard rumors about her. Emily is working hard, so I should too. Every time I hear about her, it inspires me to do my best. Emily's existence supports me even to this day. I would really like to see her. She must have become more mature and even more beautiful than before. Maybe she doesn't remember much about me. Still, I wanted to see Emily as she is now. Deciding to attend the reunion, I told my parents I'd be away from home for a while. Is that so? We'll be looking forward to the souvenir. And maybe you'll find a potential wife while you're at it. What are you talking about, Dad? As I retorted to my dad's words, Emily was still crossing my mind. I never really had a girlfriend through high school, and I hadn't met anyone special since graduating. To me, Emily was still a significant figure, perhaps even idealized in my memory. That's why I wanted to see her again. Typical New York with so many tall buildings. Arriving in New York, I was immediately overwhelmed by the sheer number and height of the buildings, but that feeling was short-lived. It feels so fresh here. I'm glad I came. My excitement rose quickly in the city, which I hadn't visited for a long time. I spent the day dropping off my luggage at the hotel I had booked in advance and wandering around, buying unique city-only souvenirs. After thoroughly enjoying myself, I decided to rest early to prepare for the reunion the next day. So, this is the venue for the reunion. New York hotels are indeed stylish. The reunion was held in a hotel banquet hall. Stepping in with a bit of nervous excitement, I started to see familiar faces. Hey, it's Matthew. Wow, it's really you. It's been so long. Long time no see, you guys. My friends quickly recognized me and greeted me warmly. In response, I smiled back at them. We slapped each other's shoulders as we used to. Well, it's been such a long time, and still that awful scar. Then, from the back, we heard an unnecessarily loud voice. Turning our gaze, we saw a group dressed in flashy attire. Ah, that's Sarah and her crew, unchanged in the worst way. They've been bringing up something, but now it seems they'd found someone to bother. It appears Sarah was among them. Our friends looked on with annoyance. Feeling uneasy, I approached the group, and it seemed they were causing a commotion. Really, How persistent can you be? That was Sarah, laughing and pressing against someone. It was Emily. Are you even listening? I'm talking to you. You hadn't changed at all. And to think you'd show up looking like that. Emily, just like in high school, was looking down, alone, holding back tears. Even at this age, they're still bullying like high schoolers. Feeling that surge of anger, I raced over to them. Cut it out, will you? As I did, I shielded Emily behind me. Wait, is that you, Matthew? Emily said, surprised, looking up at me. Seeing her like that, I couldn't help but feel a jolt of emotion. It's been a while, I managed to say, finding myself at a loss for words in front of her, who had become even more beautiful than she was back in high school. The scar was still there, yes, but it was hardly noticeable, maybe because of her makeup. Even though I had stepped in to protect her, I found myself frozen, overcome by nervousness. What's this? The country farmer thinks he's some kind of hero. That mocking tone from Sarah was what finally got me going. Looking at her, I retorted, I've always said, what's wrong with farming? You all eat vegetables, don't you? I shifted my focus from Emily and coldly retorted, I objected coldly. These people really haven't changed. Looking at Sarah with a mix of astonishment and disdain, I thought about how childish it was of her to still engage in such petty harassment. At that moment, something occurred to me. Does Sarah even know about Emily's current situation? Is she aware and still choosing to harass her this way? No, that can't be. If she knew, she wouldn't be acting like this. Thinking this, I couldn't help but smile at the thought of what's about to unfold because of Sarah's actions. What are you smiling about? Do you know who she really is? I said this while putting my arm around Emily's shoulder, facing Sarah. Sarah looked puzzled at first, but her expression quickly shifted back to one of disdain. What can she possibly be with that face? Let me guess, some low-level worker at some company, right? Even if she got the job out of pity because of her scar, it's nothing to brag about. She continued to look down on us. So you really don't know anything, huh? My smile widened. You see, she's a CEO. She's far more successful than you could ever hope to be. A CEO? No way. I can't believe it. Sarah scoffed at my words. Apparently, she doesn't listen to my words. Thank you, Matthew. Emily then stepped forward and pulled out a business card, offering it to Sarah. I apologize for the late introduction. I'm Emily Williams, the CEO of my company. The business card displayed her title as CEO and her name, Emily Williams. Do you ever talk back, Emily? Me having a scar is true after all, she said. Back in high school, Emily was always self-conscious about the scar on her face and tended to keep to herself. Sarah and her group often mocked her for that scar, and I was always concerned about it. I don't think it's something you should care so much about. I tried to reassure her, making an effort to engage her in conversation. That's how we started talking more, just the two of us. I can feel confident about myself because of this scar, Emily told me one day. At her words, I couldn't help but tilt my head in confusion. Is having a scar really that bad? She responded, her eyes widening in surprise at my question. I've always wondered something while farming. Hey, why can't this be shipped? It's because it has a scar, was the answer. Scarred vegetables can't be shipped out. If they aren't perfect and unblemished, the agricultural cooperative won't accept them. Similarly, vegetables that don't meet the standard criteria are also rejected. But these taste just as good. In reality, the flavor of pretty vegetables, scarred vegetables, and non-standard vegetables is equally delicious. In fact, some scarred vegetables taste even better. I understand what you're saying, Matthew. My grandmother used to say vegetables with scars often become tastier, as if making up for their flaws, she would explain, always cooking the unsellable vegetables for us at home. I shared this with Emily. Whether you have a scar or not doesn't change who you are. It's all about what's inside that counts. Having scars means you've experienced pain, and that can make you grow into a better person. I encouraged Emily. Hearing my words seemed to lift the weight off her shoulders, and from that day on, she no longer hung her head. Sometime later, I heard the story behind this scar from my mom. Emily shared with me quietly. It turned out she was attacked by a neighbor's dog when she was just a child. A large dog had escaped and went after Emily while she was out with her family. Her pregnant mother was there, and Emily, even as a child, had tried to protect her mother and the unborn sibling. My dad was a bit further away, but managed to chase the dog off quickly, so fortunately, it didn't get worse, she explained. So it's like a medal of honor then, I responded. Yes, it's my medal for protecting my mom and sibling. I'm not ashamed of it anymore, she said with the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. After that, Emily became even more dedicated to her studies. Matthew, I got accepted into a university in New York, Emily shared with me one day. That's amazing. I knew you could do it, Emily. She continued to maintain top grades in her class and entered the famous university. In college, she studied business administration and, after graduating, started her own company. Her business model involved buying unsellable fruits and vegetables directly from farmers and selling them directly to customers. Currently, she sells primarily in the metropolitan area, sourcing from nearby regions. Most of her customers are from the city, but the freshness, taste, and the lower prices due to the products being damaged or non-standard have also made her online sales popular. Thanks to that, I'm gradually gaining fans nationwide, Emily said, her demeanor much more confident than before. Seeing her like this made me feel a bit proud. I had known about Emily's company through our connection in agriculture and had been cheering for her from afar. I had been looking forward to seeing her after so long, but I couldn't stand by and watch Sarah mock her like in the old days. I'm sorry, Emily, for spilling the beans about your work. I just couldn't keep quiet, I apologized. It's okay. Thank you. Actually, your defense helped me find the courage to stand up for myself. After impulsively revealing Emily's profession, I felt a bit of regret. However, she no longer had the tearful look from before. She was looking forward, her eyes full of determination. Actually, I buy vegetables from here too, Sarah murmured in shock after looking at the business card Emily had given her. Her entourage leaned in to take a peek at the card and then exclaimed in surprise, recognizing the company name. Oh, that company. Well, it's well known, isn't it? It seemed her classmates were familiar with the company too, and they began to make a fuss over Emily. She smiled back at them, standing firm and looking straight ahead. Thank you for your patronage, she said. At those words, Sarah turned pale and was at a loss for words. Her followers, feeling awkward, started to drift away from her. I'll be taking my leave now. Unable to bear the stares from those around her, Sarah eventually left the venue. As Sarah left, our classmates started to applaud Emily, who gave a slightly embarrassed but lovely smile. You've become quite the celebrity, I noted as a crowd gathered around Emily, making it impossible for me to get close. I smiled bitterly and watched the scene from a distance. Emily is now talked to by everyone, unlike back then. Feeling a mix of happiness and a bit of loneliness, Emily broke away from the group and came over to me. Thanks for helping me out there, she said with shy gratitude, looking as beautiful as ever. Don't mention it. But should you be talking to me? Everyone seems to want to talk to you. It's fine. I want to talk to you, she insisted, making me fight back a grin of happiness. Because of you, I don't worry about my scar anymore, Emily said, gently touching her scar. But when Sarah started mocking me, I couldn't help but freeze up, remembering the past. Because you helped me, just like in high school, I was able to stand up to her. I was really happy. My help? I asked, surprised by her words. Emily smiled. Vegetables with scars taste better, right? I decided to compete based on what's inside, which motivated me to study hard, and thanks to that, I became a CEO. I was captivated by her smiling face. I never imagined my words would change Emily's mindset. Thank you, Matthew, she said, making me feel unexpectedly pleased. Oh, Matthew, actually, I have something work-related to discuss. Could we meet later? So we agreed to meet after the reunion. I was planning to return to my hometown the next afternoon, so we met in the morning at a cafe she had chosen. I want to make a contract with your farm, she revealed. She offered me a deal. We've only been dealing with farms in the capital area so far, but we're planning to expand nationwide, So please let us handle your vegetables too. Emily bowed her head to me, expressing her gratitude. Well, I thought it wasn't necessary to go that far. I nodded with a smile. I'm looking forward to working together. Me too. I'm looking forward to our partnership. I gladly accepted her request, and Emily and I became business partners. I fulfilled a dream, she chuckled. Huh. I've always dreamed of handling your farm's vegetables, she mentioned. The idea to start her business was inspired by me. After tasting our vegetables, she was determined to include them in her business. But your vegetables are so well known, Al. I thought it would be disrespectful to approach you with my small startup. That's why I worked hard to grow my company to a level you'd hear about. Her dedication impressed me, and to think she valued our vegetables that much. I'm glad to hear you say that. It's beneficial for us too, not having to discard good vegetables, and it's great that more people get to enjoy them. Yes, I'd want everyone to taste the vegetables from your farm. After returning home, I quickly told Michael about signing a contract with Emily's company. That's amazing. Her company was even featured on TV the other day, he responded, clearly pleased. This reassurance made me feel confident about the decision to partner with her. Matthew, there's something else I need to discuss, even though it might overlap with the contract topic. Michael then brought up a new subject. It turns out a local school had approached us about the possibility of hosting some experiential learning sessions. Jacob was particularly excited about this opportunity. How do you feel about Jacob handling this, Michael? I asked. I think he's more than capable, he replied, offering a supportive smile that felt like a nudge in the right direction. Let's leave the school matter to Jacob then. Michael, could you support him in this? Of course, he agreed. Looks like we're going to be busy, I said to Michael, feeling genuinely excited about what lay ahead. After some time passed, Matthew, Emily, you came to visit again today. Emily frequently visited our farm, combining her visits with trips back home. It seems quite lively today. Actually, today we have kids from the local school here for a field trip. That's wonderful, she said, turning her gaze towards the field. There, the neighborhood children were harvesting vegetables with bright, sparkling eyes. It was heartwarming watching them interact with Jacob and the interns with smiles. This farm is special. The vegetables here bring smiles to many people. I always feel like I want to stay here forever. Hearing those words, I couldn't help but look at Emily's face. As we've seen each other more and more, our relationship has grown closer, and now, perhaps it's the right time to express my feelings to her. Emily, would you go out with me? I asked her. This time she looked at me and said, I have a scar on my face. To me, that doesn't matter at all. Even with a scar on your face, your heart is beautiful, I reassured her. Hearing my words, she nodded with a radiant smile, and so we began dating and eventually decided to get married. What about your job in New York? I inquired. We're in the age of remote work now, she replied. She married into my family and continued her role as a CEO from our home. Is work going okay? I asked. Yes, no problem at all. In fact, I did more here in this quiet environment than I did in New York, she assured me. My parents welcomed Emily warmly. We're so happy to have a beauty like you join our family, they said. Really? We were worried Matthew might never get married, but we're truly grateful that someone as beautiful as you has married him. No one dared to mention the scar on her face. It seemed that everyone appreciated her for who she was, not her appearance. With my face, the scar doesn't matter at all. Matthew fell in love with you for who you are. You must be an incredible person, my grandmother told her. She and Emily had become very close, often seen chatting together. Everyone here is just like you, wonderful people. Exactly. Everyone knows that even if they have scars, it's what's inside that counts, I said, and Emily smiled brightly in response. We were blessed by many at our wedding. We invited all our classmates except for one person, Sarah, of course. I heard a rumor that Sarah got divorced. Apparently, Sarah had married a wealthy man and bragged about it, but her husband's company had dealings with Emily's company. Through that connection, he found out about the situation, leading to a big fight and their divorce. It seems they had a child, but the husband took custody. Sarah used her child as a trophy but lacked affection for that child. Thus, even her child grew distant, leaving her to lead a lonely life now. I heard she's desperately trying to earn child support. Apparently, Sarah spends her days working various jobs, insisting she do anything but farming. That's unfortunate. I'd consider hiring her if she genuinely humbled herself, but that's unlikely with her pride. It also seems that her former friends tried to fit in elsewhere, but faced rejection. Well, she reaped what she sowed. She should have cultivated her inner self instead of mocking others' appearances. I muttered, choosing to focus on my wedding. Matthew, is there anything I can help with? I'd love your help, but what about your work? It's fine. I've just finished a task, and I could use physical activity as a break. Emily helps out with the farming in between her work. Thanks to her, we've significantly reduced waste in our produce. As a result, our income has been steadily increasing. Also, thanks to her, my unique vegetables can now reach customers nationwide. By the way, Michael's wife said she wanted to thank you. Thank me. She said her child loved the weaning food she made with the vegetables you grew. Emily beamed happily at my words. Michael's child was born healthy and is now happily keeping Michael and his wife busy. We should hang out with them again soon. Sure, we should. Jacob has gained confidence from leading the recent field trip and has become more proactive. He's currently abroad, sharing agricultural knowledge in the interns' home countries. We can't be outdone by them. Today, we're both out in the field, sweating under the sun. A year later, we were blessed with a lovely son. Now, the three of us spend our days in the field. I wonder if he'll want to farm like us one day. Who knows? He might even say he wants to be a CEO someday. We discussed our child's future with smiles on our faces, looking forward to what lies ahead. However, we're determined to teach him to value people's inner qualities over their appearances. Our farm is a place where people of all races come together. We want him to be exposed to such diversity and learn to see the worth in everyone. With that thought, I gently stroked Aaron's head.
Actually, I've told my wife's mother that both my parents died of illness. The son I raised alone said this to me with a smirk. I was stunned, unable to comprehend what he was saying. Today was his wedding day, and I was just about to go and greet his fiancé's parents before the ceremony started. Since there had been no meeting between the two families, I hadn't had the chance to greet them until today. As I was caught off guard by what my son said, I couldn't grasp the situation and felt bewildered. "What are you talking about? I'm supposed to be dead?" I asked him. He answered triumphantly, "Yes, my wife's family is wealthy, and they're not the kind of people someone poor like you should meet. I hated the idea of them having to deal with you, so I buried your existence, you know." "Then why did you invite me to the wedding if you wanted me to be considered dead? My being here would be inconvenient for you," I countered. My son burst out laughing. "Maybe to torment you. I wanted to make you suffer. Of course, you're not allowed to attend the ceremony." Oh, this is so funny. His mocking laughter reminded me so much of my ex-husband. Feeling a chill throughout my body, I suddenly became calm and looked at my son with cold eyes. He continued to laugh, oblivious to my reaction, and blurted out, "Now I can finally cut ties with the grandma I hate." At my son's declaration of disownment, a smile inadvertently escaped me. I'd been waiting for those words. My son looked puzzled. I firmly told him, "As you wish, let's sever our ties. I'm leaving now. My name is Tiffany. I'm 52 years old. I have a husband whom I married after an office romance. His name is David. We worked in different departments, but David was a celebrity in the office. So I had known about him since I first joined the company. This was because David had a handsome face and a friendly demeanor, which made him very popular among women. I had been quietly attracted to David from the beginning. One day, there was a joint drinking party with David's department, and that's where we quickly hit it off. David and I happened to be from the same hometown, so the conversation flowed easily, and we really clicked. Soon after, David confessed his feelings to me, and I vividly remember feeling over the moon with this unexpected turn of events. Of course, I accepted. And that's how we started dating. My relationship with David was going perfectly. He was always calm, and we got along so well that we never even had a single argument. Then, exactly 1 year from when we started dating, one day, David took me to a well-known restaurant with a beautiful night view. As we were nearing the end of our meal, David, looking nervous, began to speak. "Tiffany, I'm truly happy that I met you. If you're willing, would you marry me? I think we could make a great couple," he said as he opened a box with a ring in it, creating a scene straight out of a drama. With tears of joy, I accepted, and he placed the engagement ring on my left ring finger. Soon after, we registered our marriage, had a grand wedding ceremony, and received blessings from many people. At that moment, I felt like I was the happiest person in the world. I had no doubt that David and I would live a happy life together. However, my hopes were quickly shattered. Right after we got married, David began staying away from home, claiming he had overtime work or business dinners. Moreover, the once kind David suddenly became distant and indifferent towards me. "Hey, David, can you come home early today? Let's have dinner together. I'm thinking of making your favorite beef stew," I'd say. "Shut up. Just eat by yourself. I think I'll be late again tonight." "All right, I'm off to work," he'd reply, slamming the door as I stood alone in the entryway, confused by David's sudden change. I couldn't comprehend what was happening. Since David wanted me to, I had quit my job to become a full-time homemaker, and I spent my days alone at home, tirelessly doing housework. During these lonely days, I was thrilled to discover I was pregnant. I hoped that maybe David would come home earlier once our child was born. Time passed, and 3 days after the expected due date, I gave birth to a healthy boy we named Eugene. David, holding our newborn Eugene like a treasure, was moved to tears. Seeing him like this, I thought we could live happily as a family of 3. However, he soon started staying away from home again and stopped contributing much money to the household. Suspicious of David's actions, I decided to take a drastic step and follow him. After leaving Eugene with my parents, I followed David after he left work and saw him stop in front of an apartment. When he rang the bell, a beautiful woman came out from inside. David and the woman smiled at each other and went inside together. He was having an affair. As I reeled from the reality before my eyes, something inside me snapped. After that, I acted quickly. I used my savings from before I was married to hire a private investigator to look into David's activities. Soon, they gathered evidence that David was having an affair with that woman. Apparently, the woman's name was Jessica, and she seemed to be his classmate from college. I confronted David immediately to demand an explanation, but he was defiant. "Yeah, that's right. I've been with Jessica for years, long before I married you," he confessed. "But you know, Jessica is high maintenance and hopeless at household chores, so she's not really suitable as a marriage partner. In contrast, you're plain and domestic, which made you perfect as a wife in the sense of a housekeeper. That's why I married you. Plus, my parents were nagging me to get married." David's appalling words left me feeling devastated. Who else would marry someone ugly like you? Have you ever looked in the mirror? Someone at your level getting married to me. There had to be a catch, right? With that, David burst into laughter. Was he always this hideously joyful? Is Jessica the reason you stopped bringing money home? Somehow managing to muster my voice, I asked. Exactly. Jessica's into the latest trends and loves fashion, so she's always asking me for bags, cosmetics, and stuff. Honestly, her looks and body are top-notch, but it costs a fortune, David boasted, his face smug and vulgar. "Please, let's get a divorce," I finally said. David snorted in disdain. "Yeah, whatever. I never loved you or anything. Oh, what a mistake marrying you was. It was all meaningless, just a waste of time." David never apologized. Instead, he continued to hurl abuse at me until the end. After that, I demanded alimony and child support from David and divorced him. However, David, who always liked saving money, soon fell behind on payments. He seemed to have quit his job and disappeared, so I couldn't bring a lawsuit against him. All I could do was pull myself together and focus on raising Eugene well, trying to forget about David. When Eugene turned 1, I placed him in daycare and managed to find a job, starting to work again. From then on, I raised Eugene on my own. It was tough managing work, household chores, and childcare all by myself. But I did my best not to let Eugene feel the strain of being raised by a single parent. Until he finished elementary school, Eugene was a well-behaved, mother-loving child. Though he was a bit mischievous, he had almost no troubles with friends, and we managed to live quietly and peacefully together. However, when he started middle school, Eugene began to verbally abuse me. "Useless old hag, it's your fault I have to live in poverty. My life is a mess because of you, damn old hag," he screamed, unilaterally directing these hurtful words at me. Even as I tried to soothe him, he wouldn't listen and instead yelled, "Shut up," and struck me. Though still a middle schooler, Eugene was almost as big as an adult man, and his punch knocked me to the ground. Groaning, looking down at me, Eugene muttered with utter disgust, "You make me sick, old lady," then retreated to his room. This happened repeatedly. Despite my attempts to reach out, Eugene firmly kept his heart closed off to me. Verbal abuse and violence were the norm, and Eugene often deliberately threw all the food I cooked right into the trash in front of me. Seeing my shocked expression, Eugene laughed maniacally, his face resembling his father's when confronted about his affair. Tired of Eugene's behavior, living with him became increasingly painful for me, and gradually my affection for Eugene faded away. Still, I felt a responsibility to take care of him until he was an adult, so I scrimped and saved desperately to gather funds for his college expenses. Eugene got into his college of choice and began living on his own. "Hag, you're going to miss me leaving. Oh, you're going to live a lonely life from now on, and don't you dare forget to send me money every month. If you're even a day late, I won't let it slide," he said. Eugene seemed to think I would be lonely without him, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I was genuinely relieved that Eugene was moving out. After all this verbal and physical abuse, I was honestly surprised he still thought I loved him. It seemed he truly believed parental love was unconditional, but that's not always the case. Even parents are human and have hearts. Continuous, terrible treatment from a son can extinguish any feelings of love. Since Eugene left home during the spring break before starting university, I have been living peaceful days. I never missed a month of sending money, but Eugene never bothered to thank me with even a phone call. However, that was fine by me. I didn't want anything more to do with Eugene. Years passed, and Eugene graduated from university and got a job at a certain company. One day, 3 years after starting his job, Eugene came home for the first time in a long while. "Hey, Mom, long time no see. How have you been?" Eugene, whom I hadn't seen for years, had a gentle smile. "Ah, yes, I've been fine. And you, Eugene, have you been doing well?" I asked, somewhat bewildered. It had been a very long time since he had called me Mom instead of hurling insults. "Yeah, I'm working hard. I'm in sales, so it's tough, but I'm hanging in there, man. I never thought working would be this hard," he said with a laugh, almost as if he had returned to the kind son he used to be. After catching up a bit, Eugene started. "So, Mom, I want to apologize. I was really harsh to you during my student years, wasn't I? But you know, it was my adolescence. I was going through my rebellious phase, so it couldn't be helped." His words, excusing the verbal abuse and violence as teenage rebellion, were hard to accept. However, I chose to remain silent and just listen to what he had to say. "I really am sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, truly sorry. No matter how many times I apologize, it won't be enough. But I'm really sorry," he said, bowing his head. "Are you really sorry?" It was the first time I had ever heard an apology from Eugene's lips, so I was taken aback. "Yeah, I really am sorry. Sorry. I'm 25 now and finally an adult, and I've come to realize just how terrible the things I did as a kid were. I'm sorry." As Eugene repeatedly apologized, I softly told him, "It's okay, I got it now. If Eugene was truly remorseful, I thought I might forgive him. I no longer had any affection left for Eugene, but I was willing to accept his apology." "Thank you, Mom." Eugene's face brightened instantly, and he beamed with a full smile. "Actually, I have another big piece of news." "Big news?" I tilted my head, curious about what it could be. "I'm getting married." "Really?" I was surprised. I hadn't imagined Eugene getting married, but then again, Eugene was already 25 years old. It wasn't strange for him to decide to marry at this age. "She's someone I met through work. Her name is Sarah, and she's really cute and a great person," Eugene said with a happy smile. "That's wonderful. Congratulations," I said. As I congratulated him, Eugene's smile seemed to twist slightly, looking insincerely smug, which gave me a bad feeling. Indeed, my intuition was about to be proven right. "Mom, I have a favor to ask." "What is it?" I felt uneasy inside but asked calmly. "Could you give me a wedding gift? Look, I just apologized for my past behavior, so we're even, right? You're my only parent after all, so a little celebration money would be appropriate. I mean, even though we live poorly, you must have some savings, right? Please." As I listened to Eugene's words, I felt a chill in my heart. So this was his true intention. His earlier apologies were just to wheedle money out of me. He wasn't truly remorseful. Eugene looked at me with expectant eyes, and I internally sighed deeply. I could have rightfully sent him away without a word, but I thought not giving anything for his wedding might be too harsh. So, as a final act of compassion, I decided to give him a checkbook with a few thousand in it. "It's not much, but take this check." Eugene received the check from me, overly delighted. "Yay, thanks, Mom. Well, I've got what I needed, so I'm heading out now. Oh, I'll get in touch about the wedding details." A few days later, Eugene called to inform me about the wedding date and location. "Make sure you're not late on the day." "Wait a minute. I got the time and place for the wedding, but isn't there going to be a meeting between the two families first? I haven't even met your fiancée, Sarah, yet," I asked, because it's usual to have a meeting between families before the wedding. Eugene started laughing. "Oh yeah, the meeting. Well, her parents are busy people, so it doesn't look like it's going to happen. We'll just meet on the wedding day." All right, though I felt uneasy about Eugene's attitude. I thought it must be unavoidable if they were busy and accepted it. "Okay, I understand. What about Sarah then?" "Sarah's also busy, with all the wedding prep and stuff. Oh yeah, she's going to bridal beauty treatments and all, so it's fine to meet her on the wedding day too." All right, if Sarah and her parents are okay with that, then I don't mind. And so, I ended up going to the wedding day without having met Eugene's fiancée or her parents. As I arrived at the wedding venue and was about to greet Eugene's fiancée's parents before the ceremony, I was called from behind. "Hey, Mom, where are you going?" I turned around to find Eugene. "I was going to greet your fiancée's parents, since we haven't had a family meeting yet. I haven't had the chance to greet them." When I said this, Eugene coldly snapped back, "There's no need for that. Who said you could just go greet them on your own?" "But it's just polite to greet them," I replied, confused. Eugene smirked cruelly, much like he did in his student days. "My fiancée's parents aren't the type of people a poor person like you should be greeting. Her family is wealthy, from a completely different world than you." Saying that, Eugene looked toward the entrance of the venue and waved to someone. "Hey, Dad, over here, over here." Following Eugene's gaze reflexively, I saw the last person in the world I wanted to encounter walking toward us. "Eugene, congratulations on your wedding." The grinning man was my ex-husband, David. "Why?" I was speechless. I had no idea Eugene and David were connected. I was stunned. "David." David looked at me and scoffed mockingly. "Long time no see, Tiffany. You're as plain and ugly as ever, getting older and all these wrinkles and spots. You're totally an old hag now, aren't you? LOL. But hey, you look younger than I expected. I thought you'd look even more miserable." It seems you haven't changed at all." I meant his character, but David, misunderstanding, laughed happily. "Right. I'm making an effort to stay young. Still a handsome guy, right? I'm still irresistible to women, you know, right?" Exasperated, that was all I could manage to say. "Thanks for coming today, Dad." Eugene smiled at David, and David returned a beaming smile to Eugene. They ignored me and chatted amiably. When their conversation paused, Eugene turned to me and declared, "From now on, he's my only parent. Actually, my fiancé's parents think my mother died of an illness." "What are you talking about? Then why did you invite me today?" I asked, but Eugene burst into laughter. "Maybe to torment you. I wanted to make you suffer. Of course, you're not allowed to attend the ceremony. This is so funny." David joined Eugene in laughter. Their mocking laughter was indeed very similar. "Now I can finally cut ties with the old hat I hate. Just disappear," Eugene said. At Eugene's declaration of disownment, a smile inadvertently escaped me. I've been waiting for those words. Eugene looked stunned. "Latun, do as you say and cut ties. Then I'm leaving now." With that, I turned and walked away. As I left the venue, I silently scoffed at Eugene, who knew nothing of what was truly going on. 3 months later, today being my day off from work, I had a leisurely morning brewing coffee when the doorbell rang. I went to answer it and found Eugene standing there. There stood Eugene, wearing shabby clothes with a scruffy beard and a vacant look in his eyes. He looked completely different from how he had appeared on his wedding day, and I was admittedly taken aback. "Mom, help me please. Just let me come inside for now," Eugene pleaded with a feeble voice. I responded firmly, "I won't let you inside. We can talk here, so please keep it brief." Eugene, still with vacant eyes, began to speak. "Actually, Dad suddenly told me he has a huge debt and asked if I could help out. I was shocked, but asked Sarah for help since she's wealthy. I thought she'd happily pay off her husband's father's debts, but Sarah refused. On top of that, she said she didn't think she knew me at all and called off the engagement. It appears that Eugene was begged by David to help with the debt repayment. When he turned to his wealthy fiancée, she firmly refused and even broke off their engagement. I had no idea Dad had any debts. I had never heard such a thing," Eugene said while crying. I quietly asked, "How long have you been meeting with your father?" "Since I started middle school. He approached me on my way home from school." It seems that David had been ambushing middle school Eugene since I divorced David when Eugene was an infant. It was natural that Eugene wouldn't remember David's face. However, Eugene came to believe David was his father after being shown an old photo that David had kept. It seems the photo was a family snapshot taken shortly after Eugene was born, featuring the 3 of us. I was surprised that David still had such a photo, but he probably kept it thinking it might be useful someday. I can assert that he didn't keep that photo out of affection. Then, Dad told me a lot of bad things about you, and I believed them. "What kind of bad things did he say?" I asked, though I could guess what they might be. He told me things like, "You're poor because you're with your mom. You would have a better life if you lived with me. I really wanted to take custody of you, but your mom forcibly took it away." This was why Eugene started to verbally and physically abuse me from around the time he started middle school. Dad always said he was wealthy and wore expensive-looking suits, so I completely trusted everything he said. But now that I think about it, maybe those suits were just rented. That sounds about right. A man who didn't pay alimony or child support at the time of our divorce, who has no savings and evaporates after quitting his job. Being wealthy is hard to believe. He probably approached you out of desperation because he's in debt. Eugene hung his head at my words. So everything Dad said was a lie? He kept telling me to marry a wealthy woman, using me all along. "So, what brings you here exactly? This has nothing to do with me," I asked with a sigh. Eugene burst out yelling, "Don't say that. Actually, Sarah was related to an important client at the company I worked for. Trying to marry her while hiding my real father's huge debt and then getting dumped for asking her for money has spread all over the company. I'm about to be fired. Dad keeps asking me for money, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. Mom, please help me. Even as Eugene pleaded with tears and snot running down his face, I felt no pity. There's nothing I can do for you. We're disowned, remember? But I apologize. At the wedding, I was received by my father, so I said we should cut ties, but I didn't really mean it. Eugene desperately tried to make excuses. I looked at him coldly. It's not just about the wedding. I raised you alone since you were a baby to ensure you didn't go hungry. I held full-time jobs and side jobs, and I also tried to keep up with housework and cooking. Yet you only thanked me until you were in elementary school. After that, you repeated verbal abuse and violence. That's because Dad filled my head with lies. I've already apologized for that, haven't I? Well, he did apologize, but it was only to extract a wedding gift from me, not out of genuine remorse, I replied. You've never truly apologized to me. Besides, no amount of lies justifies the verbal abuse and violence you directed at me. Furthermore, I repeatedly tried to face him, but he did not answer me in the slightest. I have no love left for you. Even seeing you in this broken state doesn't stir any desire to help you. Please leave. As I firmly stated this, Eugene's face turned red with anger. He shouted, "Don't joke with me. Aren't you my mother? A mother should help her child. You're inhuman." I don't have a son. Please don't yell here. Just go home. Damn you, old hag. Enraged, Eugene raised his right arm to strike me. I immediately shrank back and prepared myself for the pain that was about to hit me, but nothing happened. No matter how long I waited, when I cautiously looked up at Eugene, he was groaning, ouch, and clutching his right shoulder. Maybe he injured his right shoulder, I wondered for a moment, but then quickly regained my senses and shut and locked the front door. Eugene was yelling from behind the door, "Hey, we're not done talking yet. I'll call the police if you try anything else." "Just go home," I responded. Hearing the words, "police," seemed to have an effect as he retorted with a parting shot, "Damn you," and left. A month later, I received a call from Eugene. I did not answer, but an answering machine had been left for me. I played it back and heard his unruly voice. "Mom, listen. Dad won't let me go. He keeps asking me for money, and if I refuse, he becomes violent. I can't say no. He's taken most of my paycheck." The way Eugene showed signs of a shoulder injury when he appeared last month might have been due to David's violence. Even though I realized this, I certainly didn't feel any sympathy for Eugene. Violence was something he had inflicted on me endlessly. David is taller and more physically fit than Eugene, and having practiced judo in his youth, Eugene probably stands no chance against him. I could imagine that he was probably unable to fight back. Dad seems to have a gambling addiction. Even though I give him money, he spends it before he can pay off any debts. The debt never decreases, and he won't stop gambling either. I managed to keep my job, but I was demoted to a less important position. So even though my salary is low, Dad takes so much that I can't save anything. I might be reaching my breaking point. Eugene was sobbing, and it was clear he was desperate. "Mom, please lend me some money. Save me. I'm begging you. It's a lifetime request." That's where the voicemail ended. After listening to the voicemail, I immediately blocked Eugene's number. There's no way I would lend him money, and I want nothing to do with him anymore. Months later, one of Eugene's co-workers came to see me, and I learned what he was up to. Eugene had secretly recorded David's verbal abuse and violence, and after submitting this evidence to the police, David was arrested for assault. He'll be spending some time in prison. However, Eugene's mental state deteriorated, and he eventually collapsed, leading to his admission into a psychiatric ward. About a week ago, I happened to see Eugene as I was driving past his workplace. I saw a man in a disheveled suit, looking gaunt and emaciated. It took me a moment to realize it was indeed Eugene. From a distance, it was clear he was living a miserable life. But it turned out he had been admitted to a hospital. Still, I thought it was just desserts. I hope he uses his time in the hospital to reflect seriously on his actions, though knowing Eugene, real reflection might be too much to expect. In any case, it no longer concerns me. Eugene's coworker told me that he had asked him to come to me if anything happened. Eugene probably wants me to look after him and manage his finances while he is hospitalized, but I firmly refuse. I politely thanked Eugene's coworker and sent him on his way. Of course, I have no intention of visiting Eugene. Soon after, I moved and started a new life in a new town, ready for a fresh start. Having been free from the long years of suffering under Eugene and David's torment, I began to engage in hobbies like gardening and joined an outdoor club. I'm living a more vibrant life than before and enjoying every day.